Today's podcast is brought to you by Juniper Landscaping and Platinum Tree Management.
And John and Bonnie, maybe you guys can touch on this. Do you ever run into an issue to where you're at a property, you're giving a quote, or maybe your guys are there to service and they're asking you to do more, but technically you can't go to that area because it doesn't belong to them, or it's not part of your contract, or it's not part of the responsibility of the people that you are currently dealing with. You know what I mean?
Yeah, no, that's definitely an issue. I mean, the bulk of what I do is we provide consulting services for homeowners associations, but our parent company will go in and do the actual tree work on a lot of the communities, and so what'll end up happening there sometimes is you will have residents that come out and want additional work, and for for us, the way that works is, there's really set scopes of work that's very well defined. And so, the guys are pretty much instructed, hey, to tell the homeowner you need to contact your property manager and get, authorization for that because, for us, obviously you just can't go cutting down a tree just willy-nilly because somebody doesn't like that tree.
Yeah.
There's reasons why we do things. And, I mean, I've had situations where literally I had a lady come out and called the sheriff on a crew. This is years ago because the crew was removing a tree that was ready to fall down. And, nobody notified her. And so that just created this whole issue there, So, I mean, there's a lot of times where, on the tree side of things, people tend to get very passionate about trees that, are close to their units in their homes, even if they're on common property.
Yeah.
And so there does get to be a little bit of an educational component. And, typically I always try to, number one, educate the property manager and the board members. And if a homeowner comes out and approaches me, I try to answer as many questions as I can so that a lot of that stuff is clarified on the front end because you end up avoiding so many problems.
Yeah.
Just if people understand what's going on and what to expect. It's when they kind of get blindsided.
Yeah.
I had another great one. Guys were up pruning a tree, and a woman came out and literally chained herself to the tree while my guy was in the tree cutting. And it's like, oh my God.
You had a literal tree hugger.
Yeah, literally. I mean, it's, looking back at it, it's funny, but, if you don't set the expectations with people and there's, a lot of times things don't necessarily get communicated to people via a newsletter or an email blast. A lot of times what we'll recommend is, if there's going to be some pruning, send out an email blast. Hey, there's going to be some pruning, on, during this week, weather permitting. And
Well,
at least that way people are aware. And generally, I think most communities, I'm sure, Jarrod, you can speak to that. I'm sure that you do that. You try to notify people when you know that there's going to be larger bits of activity in a community.
So, John, I couldn't agree with you more regarding setting expectations. One of the things that we've done in the past, and you probably have too, is in the situation of pruning trees, is we will tag the trees in advance with colored tape so that people have an opportunity to ask questions. An email goes out, pruning's going to take place. We've marked the trees. If anybody has any questions, then they'll usually get back to the property manager before the work is done. Just gives a visual for what's coming.
That's probably
so
more
that's
powerful than
helpful.
an email, Bonnie.
Yeah, right. And it catches people's attention. And then for us, for landscaping, I would say that typically if there's an HOA or a CDD involved, the HOA, if we're giving them a proposal, they don't want to pay for anything on the CDD side. So they're usually pretty careful about setting boundaries of what is theirs and what belongs to someone else. But I will say that setting expectations for folks, because we have some communities where we are providing we provide contractual services. So our contract says, here's what we are going to provide. And usually that's based on what the homeowners association wants. So we're providing these services, and sometimes homeowners, like Jarrod was discussing earlier, they want more. They want more than just what is provided in the contract. So sometimes setting those expectations for here's what we're contracting services is really helpful. But I will say that we have some communities where we tell people, listen, if there's something you want above and beyond what we're providing, we can also do landscaping for you separate from what we're doing with the contract. So we would actually bring in a separate crew and do some additional work for those homeowners.
Well, I think too, though, I think the problem comes in is you have a homeowner that has no clue what's going on. And the guy's out there doing the work or whatever, and they go up to this poor guy, and he's like, look, I don't know. I'm not the one that set this up. I'm just here doing the work. And then, and what I want to do is find out, kind of dive into what are the managers putting out there. Number one, how are they getting the communication out there? Because I know working with BMI, trying to get communication to a large group of people, it's so difficult. And you can't just use one method. You have to use multiple methods and hope that one way or another, they're going to get the message. And I guess, and Jarrod can answer this, I guess there is some responsibility on the homeowner side to, that they have to be able to stay involved, open those emails, know what's going on. But you're still going to have that poor guy that's out there doing the landscape work that gets approached or what have you. And which causes a problem, because then the homeowner's like, well, he doesn't know what's going on. And then the homeowner calls the board members, and then the board members call the managers. And, it just turns into this big mess. And it's like, if only Sally had read that email, because let's say Sally's the complainer, if she'd have read that email that said, we're having this guy come out, he's only doing this while he's here, or whatever it is. I want to help with how can we communicate and get the message out there. And then once we've addressed communicating with the community, okay, now let's talk about what is provided with the service providers on that side of it. Are the service providers giving the managers something, let's say a color graded plot plan or something on their end that the managers can then turn over and show to the community to say, this is what's going on. And I know for a fact, and this is nothing against John and Bonnie, but I just know personally when I'm dealing with contractors, it's harder. Contractors have a different communication level than what us office workers have. And so it's almost like you have to pull information sometimes. But I'm certain that there are contractors out there, and you guys probably may already have something in place where you guys provide something that's really nice that helps the manager go in and present it and be able to show the community is, okay, we're closing down this road because we have to reseal this road or whatever, or this parking lot. Do not park over here. And then this is the timeline. This is what we expect. Should it not rain, this is what we expect the timeline to be. And on this date, you'll be able to park back over here again, that kind of thing. And I would love to see for us to all to come together and help people bridge that gap of communication and not just give the managers ideas, but also give the service providers ideas to assist the managers better. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that's a great.
That's a great point. When we do a property, we give them a lot of communication about how things are going to be done, including a color-coded map of how we will move throughout the community during the time that we're there, whether that's a couple of days or if we're on site permanently.
Okay.
We show them with color coding what we do, and then they can forward that on to the homeowners. And typically that's provided in a proposal to the entire board. So there's a lot of communication. It's how it gets passed on, I think.
So Jarrod,
Right.
on your end, when you get something like that, do you put together something for the community that goes out to all of the owners? Or is that I guess that would be the board's call. Do we want to give them this information? Some boards may not want to give out information because they don't want homeowners coming to them asking more questions. That's a whole nother topic.
Yeah, I mean, it certainly depends, absolutely. And you know, Bonnie and I've used, you know, I still have, you know, Juniper services on a property, and you know, it is in their proposal. It's, you know, it's a great guide to say, you know, here's what's coming up, here's what to expect, and here's the level of service. And I think, you know, all of this conversation gets wrapped in a bow, you know, just thinking about this is in a topic about best practices for managing expectations in a lot of ways, right? Because
Right.
if our service providers provide some best practices, some things, you know, as Bonnie was stating, John was saying about giving out, you know, resources and information to managers to provide to homeowners, these are resources. These are some best practices. And it's up to the manager and the board to determine, you know, at what level does my community need to have certain information? You know, is this a community that needs to have dates and times and figures and facts and all this information going out to them? Or is this a community who it doesn't really matter as long as they get service done? And that's up to the manager and the board. But the resources are there, and it's great to communicate this out. And I know that, you know, I know that these maps and these charts and these expectations of service that's been provided, whether it's fertilization or hedge trimming or palm trimming, you know, is it every 2 weeks? Is it, you know, once a month? I know that I can provide that information to our members. In this one community that I have, we send it out in a monthly email. This is what you're going to expect this month. This is what's coming up.
Yep.
And so we set that out so they have a heads up. But then it also brings with it a lot more questions. And though they trimmed, but they down far enough, I was expecting it was going to go much lower. So I was having conversation with them, say, well, this is consistent throughout the entire community. It's just below the window ledge. Now we're making it so that hedges around air conditioning units are just a couple inches below the air conditioning unit to allow for more airflow. But, you know, there's certain things that come up that we have to have these conversations, but it's consistency and it's, you know, providing these that information to the owners that really want that information.
Yeah.
That's a huge part of the whole thing is, you know, I think Jarrod really hit it on the head is, you know, both on the landscaping and the tree side of things, you know, it is providing a consistent service. And that's where you get some of this discrepancy. You get the homeowner that comes out and, oh, I want this at 3 feet, while the specifications call for it to be trimmed at 4 feet. and so you kind of get into this. One of the things that we do is, you know, we do a lot of training with our crew, and you know, everybody on the crew understands, you know, the foreman is in charge, and if somebody comes up to a crew member, you know, that may be dragging some brush or what have you, you know, they need to direct that person to the foreman. And then the foreman actually, you know, is the one that kind of take charge of that situation. Because, you know, kind of going back to the point of the homeowner comes up to this poor guy that's doing work, you know, if that person, you know, says the wrong thing, then, you know, you get these mixed messages. And so it's always best if things are just directed through one person, and then that person can communicate back to me or operations manager. And get clarification or direction on, yeah, hey, go ahead and take care of that, or no, we need to contact the property manager, I'll make a phone call, what have you. One of the things that we do too is, we're believe wholeheartedly in providing, tree maps, and oftentimes what we do is we'll color code those things, because a lot of what we're dealing with are, really multi-year programs that we develop for communities. And
don't get into it too much, because I want to do this on next Wednesday.
Okay. No, I won't. Okay, I'll shut up then. But I think a lot of it goes back to that whole communications thing. I like what Jarrod said. It's kind of the best practices on communications. You got email blast, you got face to face. What I've seen a lot of communities do too is they'll post notices at like a community mailbox. But I see a lot of notices. That's been pretty effective in my experience as well.
If there's a community note mailbox area, that is a good, that's probably one of the best places to put something, I would think.
That's
all
what
right.
they do. That's what they do. Sorry, that's what they do where I live. There are a lot of notices by the mailboxes.
Do they do door to? I don't know. Maybe Jarrod can answer this. Do they drop? I remember I used to get little flyers on my door. This, from the board. This is what we're doing this week. Do they still do that?
Nah, not really, because it's, of cost, with paper and, stuff like that. But most everything nowadays is electronic if the community's moving that direction.
Huh. Okay. That's interesting.
Yeah. They will still post at the bulletin boards, whether that's at the amenity area or at the mailbox, or at both, wherever they have the common, place to go. So we post a lot of stuff, there. But besides that, it's pretty much electronic these days.
So I guess
that's what I've experienced where I live, is you get emails and then there's posting in common areas. So they hope to catch people one way or the other. I'm sorry, John, go ahead.
So, Jarrod, I guess, when you talk about electronics, and, from the sounds of it, a lot of your communities are kind of like communities where the developers recently turned over. So I'm assuming you got, a pretty high amount of younger people. Do you have any communities that are, say, like 55 plus that you handle or manage?
Not currently managed, but I have managed 55 plus communities in the past. There have been, for that community, those communities specifically, one was a single family home gated community. The other one was a condominium community. And they also had expectations of electronic communication. They were very savvy. Some of them had, family members help, but I even had the board. And I love these 55 plus communities because, their board meetings are at like 9:00 in the morning because everyone is retired. And, I don't have to take an evening out to have a board meeting.
Sure.
But the board themselves had a higher level of engagement or understanding, I think, of technology, and even to a point where they conducted a workshop with some homeowners that just came through to show them how to use certain things or how to sign up for it. And for
community
some
workshop.
of them, it was like a community workshop that they showed them how to access, certain materials or navigate the website or sign up for things. They in their clubhouse, they posted, sign up sheets for like social events or card games and, things that they did. But if they had to send out any communications, it was done electronically. For their gates, to register guests at their gates, there was a form that they had to complete. Anyone who, didn't have access to a computer or couldn't do it at some point, they could always reach out to. There was one board member that they could send an email to, and they would go over there and sit down with them and help them fill that out.
That's
And then
cool.
so, you know, there's some sort of engagement and opportunity because they want them to, you know, be a part of the community, and they found ways to make it work.
That's cool.
It was great. Yeah, I mean, and
I've seen it. I've seen it go both. I've seen it go both ways.
Oh,
You know?
absolutely. And some of them have like family members that will do it. I still have a couple of homeowners, you know, that don't, you know, sign up for electronic communications. They'd rather get mailed, and, you know, and I advise them that we just can't mail out every piece of information, and I can't just target, you know, a couple of homes in every single community just with the number of doors to manage. So
Right.
it's, you know, and that's where it comes into play, is how much time are we spending on a lot of these things. And I have one community where I don't have to do the newsletter, which is fantastic, because the committee member does it, and sends it on behalf of the entire board. And so, and they work with the board president, of course, but, you know, that communications goes out seamlessly, and they do a bi-weekly newsletter to the entire
Wow.
community, including all the information that I don't have to worry about.
Wow.
The only thing I worry about is sending out meeting notices.
Sorry, where I live, we get them quarterly, but it is kind of the same setup like you're talking about, Jarrod, where there's a committee that does it, so the CAM doesn't have to. So that's kind of nice. I wanted to circle back to one of the things you were talking about. You know, we do 90% of our maintenance contracts are with HOAs, so that's kind of our sweet spot. And we find, especially in the 55 and older, there are some that are very tech savvy, and that's great. So we have a way for them to submit requests to us online, or we have an app that they can use on their phone. But for those that are not tech savvy, or just don't, at that point in time, don't have the time or the access to a computer or their phone to use the app, if they want to call in, we actually have a fully staffed customer service unit, so with real live people. So if we have a community where some people prefer to call in with a request, they can do that. So I think it's nice when you have a mix of that as a service provider, so that people have a little bit of everything. You're trying to accommodate everyone, basically.
Oh yeah, most definitely. And it goes back to, like, you know, the various learning styles that, you know, people learn information, you know, whether it's video or phone or, you know, chat conversations, or, you know, whatever it is, we all want access to something. At least if we provide multiple opportunities to engage, no one can say, well, I didn't know.
Right.
Exactly. Yep.